What if I told you the one nation the United States fears the most isn't the one with the biggest army, the largest economy, or the loudest voice, but the one that refuses to bow? This isn't about politics. This is about truth, the kind the world isn't ready to face. Behind every sanction, behind every threat, behind every headline lies a fear that runs deeper than oil, deeper than war, a fear of something that cannot be controlled. Iran didn't just survive decades of isolation. It redefined resistance. It didn't just fight back. It lit a fire that's spreading across the Muslim world. And while most nations crumble under pressure, Iran built power in silence, through sacrifice, pride, and belief. This isn't the story you've been told. It's the one they hope you never hear. So don't blink. Don't scroll. Don't look away. Because once you hear the truth, you'll never unsee it. This is why the U.S. fears Iran more than any other nation, the hidden truth. And by the end of this video, the whole world might just understand why. Iran's unshakable ideology is what truly sets it apart on the world stage. This is not just a nation with a flag and a government. It is a nation with a mission, a deeply rooted belief system forged through revolution, faith, and resistance. When the Islamic Revolution erupted in 1979, it didn't just overthrow a monarchy. It sent a shockwave through the entire Western order. For the first time in modern history, a country stood up and said no, not just to imperialism, not just to Western domination, but to the entire system of secular materialism that was being imposed on the world. Iran didn't just want independence in politics or economics, it wanted ideological independence. And that's what scared the U.S. the most. Because you can negotiate with a politician, you can manipulate an economy, you can even overthrow a government, but you can't easily destroy an idea, especially when that idea is rooted in sacrifice and martyrdom, in a spiritual belief that dying for a cause is more honorable than living in submission. The ideology of Iran is built on resistance, not just against occupation or injustice, but against moral decay, cultural infiltration, and the erasure of identity. It rejects the modern colonial mindset, not just in military terms, but in spiritual terms. That's why every missile test, every speech, every flag waved in resistance carries more weight than just politics. It carries meaning. The United States operates through influence. It conquers without always firing a bullet, through Hollywood, through consumerism, through debt, through cultural narratives that erode tradition. But Iran is one of the few countries that built an entire system designed to resist that. It has its own media, its own scholars, its own heroes. And they're not chasing after Western approval. Iran's leaders don't want to be invited to the global dinner table. They want to build their own. That level of self-respect, that refusal to bow, makes the U.S. nervous. Because if one nation can do it, others might follow. This ideology also fuels Iran's foreign policy. Its support for movements in Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, and Yemen isn't just political maneuvering, it's ideological solidarity. Iran sees itself not just as a nation, but as a voice for the oppressed. That's not the language of diplomacy. That's the language of revolution. And the West has no formula to tame that.
If you're an Iranian right now, you're going to do everything in your power to build a nuclear weapon. In fact, I would argue that there will be countries all over the world that will now build nuclear weapons because they don't want to be visited by the United States Armed Forces in the middle of the night. We are the threat. We are the rogue state supporting the other rogue state, Israel. And then finally, no mention is being made in this country in any way, shape, or form of what's happening in Gaza. There's a complete failure to understand that Gaza is the catalyst for the larger war that's now going to begin against Israel. Every Muslim country is going to come on board against Israel, along with Russia, along with China. I'd be surprised if Mr. Putin doesn't make it very clear to Mr. Netanyahu that if he contemplates using a nuclear weapon, he needs to understand something. If you do this, if you use a nuclear weapon against Iran or anyone in the Middle East, we will use a nuclear weapon against you. I'd be very surprised if he has not already said that. We don't understand what we've walked into because we're not informed. We still think this is 1991. Listen to the rhetoric. I'm ready for peace now. We've made our point. We hope the Iranians understand us and will make peace. Have you lost your mind? The war is now just beginning.
Yes, it's not the beginning of the end. It's merely the end of the beginning, as Mr. Churchill said. Now, the impact of all this on Donald Trump's popularity, all the hypocrites are coming out. Nancy Pelosi is denouncing this lawless act of brigandry. All the Democrat hypocrites who would have done exactly the same thing. Of course, they represent nearly half of the American people. And therefore, how many of Trump's voters now desert him is going to be a huge factor in the midterms, isn't it? Its impact on MAGA is surely going to be significant because this is a total about-face for the Donald Trump that people thought they were electing. This is the man who denounced the Iraq War, who denounced Obama, accused him of being ready to go to war with Iran in order to win an election. This is the Tulsi Gabbard who said just weeks ago that in terms there was no case for this kind of an action. When people do an about-face like that, they must lose a part of their base. How do you quantify that, Colonel?
Well, the desertions from so-called MAGA have already begun because MAGA turns out to have been a myth. Let's be frank, it was never real. People voted for something that was never real. You've got to go back to the Republican National Convention. And during the Republican National Convention, there was a giant Israeli flag on the wall. And there was a placard above the flag that said, Israel first. And then a gentleman walked out to the podium, ostensibly representing the Israel lobby, and tried to lead cheers for Israel first. Well, the response was tepid, to say the least. But the people that voted for Donald Trump didn't understand what they were listening to. The signal was unambiguous and clear. You were voting for Israel first. And that's what you got for a cabinet. That's what you got for a government. Now, as you point out, that applied equally to the other side, regardless of what the other side says. We have a government in Washington that is corrupt to its core. It's corrupt, it's ineffective, it's incompetent. And that's what we are now going to discover in the days and weeks and months ahead. The whole place is going to come apart because this war is going to expand. The family dictatorships that controlled the Arabian side of the Persian Gulf are not going to survive this. The Saudis are at high risk. Why are they at high risk? Why is King Abdullah in Jordan at high risk? Because there are hundreds of millions of Muslim Arabs that are saying this is unacceptable. This must stop. And you're going to see new governments come online. We are going to lose everything as a result of this overseas. We are inevitably going to be driven out of the Middle East, the thing that everyone said we were fighting to prevent. And we're going to watch Israel be destroyed day after day after day. This, in other words, the world is going to be turned upside down. Everything that we've supposedly worked for decades will be lost. Now, in the long run, this is a damn good thing for us. We need to get out of these places. We need to come home. And we haven't even talked about the potential for really bad things to happen inside the United States. Set aside the very likely financial meltdown that is coming. As soon as we start to lose troops, men, people, ships, anything, you're going to see the stock market react very negatively. That's not just the market, but we have the bond market. You're going to watch the interest rates rise. We're going to try and suppress the inevitable inflation that results. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to happen. And as these things grow worse, the demand here at home for change in everything. Most important, change overseas. Come home. No more wars. That pressure is going to be overwhelming. Doesn't matter who is in Washington and what they say. They're all going to confront this. So this is a in the language of fools in Washington, a game changer, as though this were a game. This is a strategic sea change. We don't get it, and we're not going to get it until all of the bad things happen that are coming. And by the way, there are a lot of people that are in the intelligence business that are professional who are now worried about terrible things happening here inside the United States. Our borders were open for years, George. We don't know who's in the country. We have people worried about the explosion of a dirty bomb inside our borders. And we should be worried, extremely worried. But until these things happen, the American people will not really wake up. They may walk away from Donald Trump and say, what a mistake we made, but they're not going to demand real action until they're hurt. That's coming.